Hello and welcome to this informational presentation on the Washington State Volunteer Service Awards, presented by Serve Washington. My name is Adam Schmidt and I will be providing narration throughout today's presentation. Thanks for joining. Throughout this presentation, we'll be learning how to submit a nomination for the Washington State Volunteer Service Awards for volunteer activities and activities conducted in 2025. If you haven't already, I encourage you to visit servewashington.wa.gov, or you can scan the QR code on the screen now to assure you have the most up-to-date information before submitting your nominations. We'll be going through a lot of details today, but this website assures you have everything you need to submit a successful nomination form. So to preview the topics discussed in today's presentation, let's first take a look at the agenda. First, we'll discuss the agency responsible for administering these awards, Serve Washington, along with some valuable context and history for the Washington State Volunteer Service Awards. From there, we'll spend much of our time reviewing the timeline and nomination process for this prestigious award. As we conclude, I'll go over the most common mistakes and a few tips for your nominations. I'll also ask for your feedback to improve this process for future iterations. First up, let's take a moment to learn a bit more about Serve Washington. It's important to know we're a government agency in the Office of Financial Management, and we're charged with providing the leadership and vision alongside local volunteer organizations, civic and community groups, and government institutions to make sure service is a part of the lives of all Washingtonians. We were created in 1994 and have a 20-member governor-appointed commissioner team to help guide Serve Washington's work. To achieve our stated goals, we administer a variety of federally and state-funded programs, including those listed here on screen: AmeriCorps, Community Emergency Response Teams, and the Washington Climate Corps Network. In 2005, we began formally recognizing outstanding volunteers and service through our State Volunteer Recognition Initiative. Now, in 2025, we are excited to be celebrating 20 years of service recognition here in Washington. Next up, let's learn a bit more about the Washington State Volunteer Service Awards. As mentioned, this initiative started in 2005 to honor volunteers recruited by national service programs. Over time, we expanded the awards to be more inclusive of the many acts of kindness that individuals, families, and service groups perform in communities across our state. Formerly known as the Governor's Volunteer Service Awards, award ceremonies were held at the Governor's Mansion and on the Washington State Capitol campus in Olympia. After receiving feedback from our commissioners, staff, community partners, we decided to shift our process in an effort to make participation more equitable and more accessible by removing barriers for award recipients, such as time and costs associated with the travel to Olympia, and participating more in local and regional recognition activities to honor each recipient in their community. In 2023, we relaunched the volunteer recognition program as the Washington State Volunteer Service Awards. Serve Washington believes that volunteer recognition should be accessible to everyone. This annual recognition serves as an opportunity to celebrate the incredible impact volunteers make in communities across our state and inspire others to make a difference in theirs. Now that we understand the history and background of the awards, it's important to ask, why is volunteer recognition important to Serve Washington? Well, we recognize volunteers and their service to our communities for many, many reasons, but I'll highlight just a few. First, all forms of service, both formal and non-formal, strengthen our state and are fundamental to engaged and resilient communities. Whether you're formally pledging to serve in one of the programs that are administered by Serve Washington, or you're taking action in your community by helping a homebound neighbor, checking in on elders, or coaching a youth sports team, we want to lift up and recognize all these efforts to strengthen our communities. Next, in order to sustain and grow service opportunities, it's important that we take time and resources to support and build up these service leaders. Third, we see that volunteer recognition increases our shared awareness of volunteer opportunities across our great state and educates community members about the continued needs in their area. Finally, volunteer recognition is a part of our mission and gubernatorial directive for Serve Washington. So with all these in mind, now that we've covered why it's important, let's discuss how awards are selected to honor the diversity of the state. As part of the redesign in 2023, we now select awardees from 9 separate regions across the state, one individual and one group or volunteer program from each region. This allows us to award more people throughout the state and recognize the varied forms and types of volunteerism. The map on the left side of the screen highlights 9 regions, displayed by color. These regions were defined in alignment with our partners at the Nonprofits Association of Washington and 501 Commons. We at Serve Washington will work with nominators and local partners to determine the best way we can honor award recipients in their community or region. We learned from volunteer partners, agencies, and community members that presenting these awards in the areas they serve would inspire more meaningful and inclusive engagement with volunteerism efforts on a local level. Please note that given recent budget constraints, representatives from Serve Washington may not be able to attend award presentations, but regardless, we are committed to supporting nominators and local partners with recognition and gratitude. Now that we've gone over some of the basics, let's shift into the process of nomination, selection, and awarding. On the screen, you'll see a brief timeline overview. We will be accepting nominations through January 5th, 2026. The Nomination Review Committee, a group including community members from each region and commissioner committee members, will review and score submissions through January and make final selections in February. All nominators will receive notification of final awardees no later than February 27th. In March, Serve Washington will communicate with the nominators of the finalists for additional information on their volunteer or group of volunteers and planning for award presentations. We will also be in communication with the awardees for fact-checking and to collect photos and release forms. Please note, representatives of Serve Washington and our ability to travel to communities is currently restricted due to the state's travel freeze. Serve Washington will publicly announce the winners at the beginning of April for Global Volunteer Month and will make special mention throughout National Volunteer Week. Recognition efforts can take place at convenient times for the nominator and awardee, even if that happens to be after April. All right, with that timeline information out of the way, let's look at the actual nomination process. So visible on the screen on the left-hand side, you can see the full link to our webpage that it has specific information for the Volunteer Service Awards. We've also created an easily shareable flyer that's available on this page for you to distribute throughout your networks. I encourage you to share the website along with the informational video on social media, newsletters, or any volunteering agencies in your community as we look to lift up the many great volunteers across our state. Let's move on to the process though. As mentioned earlier, we have formally launched our call for nominations and posted the guidelines and online form available now. The guidelines document walks you through the major components of the nomination and awarding, and that includes eligibility, definitions, our selection criteria, as well as a sample form to help you prepare before completing the online form, as well as the nomination statement and the required elements therein, as well as a bit of the post-submission information you'll find as well. So now that that information has been posted, we're working on our outreach to every service partner and volunteering group across Washington. We'll be working with local and state agencies and community partners to assure we're receiving nominations from every region. As questions arise and folks start receiving this information, I also want to make special mention that Serve Washington staff will be available to offer support, answer questions, and address any technical issues you may experience as they arise. Most importantly, I've mentioned it a couple times, all submissions are due January 5th, 2026. I highly encourage you to get those nominations in before the busy winter holiday season and make sure and use all the resources and guidelines we've posted available to you prior to that final week. Now, let's take a look at the Serve Washington link I mentioned here on this side of the screen. Here's a screenshot of the website you'll be greeted with when you follow that link I mentioned in the last slide. It's just a quick sneak peek preview, but I wanted to make sure it was familiar to you all. At the top of the page, under the headline, Nominations Now Open Until January 5th, 2026, you can find the links to the nomination guidelines and the online nomination form. The link to the guidelines is indicated by this red arrow. It's hyperlinked in the text that reads Review the Nomination Guidelines PDF. You can open it on most web browsers and mobile devices. The link to the form that you'll need to complete for an online nomination is indicated by the yellow arrow as well. This as well should work for any desktop browser and mobile device you may be using. Following those links on that web page will take you to the websites listed here. As you begin considering your nomination, it's important to remember that throughout this entire process, you're ultimately going to be a storyteller. We want to hear about all the great volunteer service in your community, and beyond the facts of the service, we want to understand the story of the person and the community that they are serving. So before I let you go, off to submit your form, let's look at some important information you'll need on drafting a good nomination and the common mistakes that you'll need to consider before you go ahead and slap that submit button. So, the best advice I can offer everyone watching this video, regardless of where you are or who you're nominating, is make your words count. The nomination form has a limit of 750 words. Word limits, I'm sure, as you may be familiar with, are a challenge for writers and an opportunity for editors. While I'm certain there are countless ways you could use to describe the outstanding things your nominees have done, it's important to consider how you're describing that's just as valuable as what you're describing. As nominators, again, you will have an intimate relationship to the nominee and their community, but the person reviewing your nomination doesn't have that same advantage. Your primary goal is to help this evaluator become familiar with your nominee through the words you choose to complete this nomination. So over the next few slides, I've taken some anonymous examples of previously submitted nominations to demonstrate the most common mistakes evaluators have from a nomination that make it difficult to understand and evaluate. Our purpose for including these as part of this session isn't to tell you what to put in the nomination, but how to avoid the most common mistakes and to make your 750 words count. Mistake number 1, unnecessary words. Let's check out an example. In every community, there are select individuals who emerge as pillars of strength, leadership, and unwavering dedication to their fellow citizens. On the streets of Cinnamon, one such individual stands out, Birdie. It is with fervent conviction that I put forward his name for the Washington State Volunteer Service Award, an accolade he not only deserves, but embodies in every facet of his life. Okay, so for those already paying attention, that was 74 words. Nearly 13% of the nomination space is used just to say, I'm submitting a nomination. So it may sound like the structure and these words are compelling, but in truth, it's taking too much time and it's distracting the reader from ultimately your goal, which is to quickly get to the value this person brought to the community or the agency and the type of service and how compelling they were in performing that service. So how do we avoid this? Let's check out a solution. Solution number 1, be specific, be direct. Pay attention to what is being asked for in the nomination form. So in the nomination form, you'll see a few prompts which are meant to be examples of ways to describe how to respond. You do not need to address each one. The nomination form has fields for your name, your region, and other nominee information that does not contribute to the 750 word limit. You won't need to repeat that information in any of these other sections. I'll highlight the 3 key sections from the nomination form where you'll enter your narrative responses. This is where your 750 word count will apply. Again, that's 750 words total for all 3 of these sections. First up, accomplishments. You can include quantitative accomplishments, such as the volunteer served 100 meals to people experiencing food insecurity, or qualitative ones, where you feature anecdotal stories or testimony from yourself or community members. Next, we have impact. This is how you show how their service affects others, demonstrating the cause and effect. For example, you can say, the outreach efforts of the animal shelter volunteer has seen our adoptions go up tenfold. We're connecting the action to how it affected the community, the organization, or the individual. The next section is commitment to volunteerism. This is several longer sub-bullets you can see here. You don't need to address each and every single one, but it does help to pull out examples of how they've demonstrated an outstanding commitment to volunteerism. So perhaps the nominee overcame challenges to volunteer. Maybe they took on more responsibility. Does your volunteer demonstrate community building and connection through fostering justice or equity or diversity or inclusion? This is the space to show that. Sub-bullets A, B, C, and D pull out examples of how you could demonstrate that commitment. So regardless of where you're typing in these narrative responses, the entire form again cannot exceed the 750 word limit. Words past that number will not be seen by the evaluator. Do your best to avoid duplicating the same response in multiple areas. I highly recommend using a word processing program to check your word count prior to your submission, and once you've submitted, no further changes can be made. Let's look on to mistake number 2. Mistake number 2, telling instead of showing. When I described the nomination sections in the previous slide, you may have noticed I used the word show instead of tell. We'll go over that in more detail with this example. Telling is when you use a lot of words to really tell us something, but you're not demonstrating anything. Here's an example. Birdie has unequivocally made volunteering part of their everyday life. They do not do it for accolades. It's simply part of who they are. Their contributions to various organizations across Cinnamon Street are felt within the communities they touch. Birdie is an amazing human being. They are a lovely person to give back in this supportive way. One of the amazing things about Birdie is their kind and giving heart. In this example, there are almost 100 words describing a lot of great qualities, but they don't show us what Birdie is volunteering for or how their actions indicate to you, the reader, that they are a great volunteer. Almost 100 words towards your 750 word limit, and we don't really have a clue as to their specific activities. And you can see it in contributions to various organizations. What kind of contributions? Which organizations? They are an amazing human being. What kind of human being are they, and how are they amazing? What are the things they're doing that make them amazing? If they are giving back in a supportive way, describe that supportive way and let the evaluator understand that their actions are supportive, the person therefore is amazing, and the communities they reach really feel the impact of their actions. Next, let's go over the solution to address this problem. So we've gone over it a little bit already, but in truth, show us why someone is awesome through their actions. Be specific. Show us, don't tell us what they are. Like this example here. Hugo thwarted a bank robbery, rescued 2 kittens who got stuck in a tree, organized his neighbors to deliver 500 pounds of food to the Cinnamon Food Bank, and volunteered at the Children's Hospital to read stories and play games. See the difference between the two slides? You can kind of see the activities and accomplishments draw you to understanding they're almost a superhero in a way. They not only saving children or saving kittens, they're reading to children. They're not only organizing their community, they're donating food. The actions lend the reader to understand that this person is good, is honorable, is amazing through their actions. So let's move on from this super example to our final mistake. Our final mistake is technical jargon, buzzwords, and acronyms. I'm especially partial to this next one. I use it all the time. It's very difficult once you're speaking with colleagues or folks that are highly connected to your community or your field of expertise. So I've pulled this sample nomination from one of our grumpier volunteers. Ozzy is a highly trained can manager for Cinnamon Street's Felt Waste and Customer Complaints SSFWCSC division, managing more than 30 artfully puppeteered residents for over 20 publicly sponsored telecasts, requiring an approximate time commitment of 2,000 hours. He is the primary customer compliance officer and exclusive residential engineer of a Category 3 composite aluminum grade 24-inch diameter waste cylinder on the northwest corner of the 1000 block of Cinnamon Street. So, wow, we are getting really specific now, which is one of the qualities we look for, but it's far too much into the technical jargon, buzzwords, and acronyms to be really penetrable and understandable from the evaluator's perspective. So in short, we are not asking our evaluators to track down information that may be missing to them, reach out to understand your technical terms. Nominations are going to be evaluated based on the words submitted. Even the sharpest readers can get a little grumpy if they feel like they need to be an expert in order to comprehend the purpose of your paragraph or of your writing. So I really encourage you to do your best to explain what the nominee does in terms someone totally unfamiliar with you or your organization or your community would understand. Let's check out that solution. Our solution here, of course, use plain talk. Let's check out an example of what that looks like. As a volunteer lead for the Cinnamon Street Recycling Program, Ozzy trains more than 30 puppets a year. He led the puppets through 20 shows in 2025, where they collectively filmed more than 2,000 hours. His service in sorting recyclables from waste-prepared Cinnamon Street residents for dozens of celebrity guests and educated children across the country. Going back, of course, to our first recommendation, we see really punchy, distinct characteristics of their service. We're shown a lot more of their great qualities, and we avoid a lot of the mistakes of this last problem here where we're not having any abbreviations, acronyms, or any complicated technical terms that I would need to research on my own. So once again, for this solution, our tips are to use plain talk, common terms, things that if someone outside of your field of interest would be able to clearly understand whenever they're reading it for the first time. Avoiding things like talking shop, things that you might be familiar with where you're using specialized or technical terms, right? Really as if you're explaining it to a 5-year-old or someone who is totally foreign to your world of action. One final tip on this is if you're not sure if the terms you're using are coming across the way you're hoping for, read it to someone else. See if they understand what you're trying to get across and see if they can identify the characteristics you're really trying to highlight about this volunteer. Now that you've got that completed, that's our last solution for you. Let's look over at what happens after you hit submit. Once submitted, your nomination goes to a team of community reviewers. This small team of people are selected through the state to review and score nominations in addition to our Volunteer Recognition Committee of Commissioners. They spend about 8 hours on their own reviewing nominations for the region that is assigned to them. And then they meet with the Committee of Commissioners to share scores and discuss as a group the results for that region. They then make final selections for the winners for each region. The review process is conducted virtually. So if being a community reviewer sounds like something you or someone you know is interested in, we invite you to contact us with your interest. Just note that if you are nominating someone for these awards, you will not be able to participate as a community reviewer. So with that final piece of information, that wraps up just about everything we have for this presentation. If you have specific questions, comments, or you just like a little bit of support in submitting your nomination, please contact us by email or phone at servewa@ofm.wa.gov or 360-902-0657. Finally, I want to invite you to provide feedback on this video to let me know if it was helpful and where we can improve by completing a very brief survey. A link to this survey is posted in the description of the video and on the webpage with this recording. Up here as well on the screen once again is that flyer we've made available for you to share. You can scan the QR code or visit the website included there. Until then, thanks so much for your interest. We look forward to receiving your nominations.